Yeah, when it says 7:50, 8:30, we'll go off. I'm gonna start us off. I'm gonna ask y'all what y'all think about this sanctuary city bill he just signed.
Oh boy.
If you have a comment you'd like to make, that'd be the time for
I
it.
have so many different angles.
Well,
on
that's
that.
what I know. We might just fill up the whole show with that.
Well,
huh?
We'll just mix it up.
Well,
man.
no,
Just mix
It's a
it up
trailer
here.
park. You can talk anything you want.
Pokey, you need to understand this.
Yes, sir.
I'm out in Del Valle.
I know there's a lot of things you want to tell me I need to
And
understand.
we have 94% minority, 82% of those kids are Latino. We had been dealing with
Sound like my
all
neighborhood.
of the issues that we're talking about before this thing ever came up. We had people literally in our offices that are notaries because we had kids, we had parents that were being picked up and taken away all the time.
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you
But
just
until-
wait for
but
another
until
and we
Sally-
can tell that.
No. But until Sally
Wait, warmed
Hernandez
up.
did that and brought attention to us, because Sally, why did you have to say anything at all? But you decided you wanted to be a good Democrat because you want to stand up for
Why
something
did
that
she
had
open
nothing
her
to do
big
with
mouth in
anything.
the first place?
Let
That's
her
what
talk.
I thought.
Because it didn't have to be said.
Hey, I got
You
the
could have
same-
done it without
yeah.
saying anything at all, but you wanted to make
Yeah.
sure everybody knew you was high
You want to make a political statement. You wanna
And
make
in
a
doing
political
so,
statement.
my children, not your children, my children suffered.
Right.
Well, if
So now I got kids who are afraid to come to school altogether now.
so you don't mind if we do that, and then we'll get back into whatever city finance whenever, if and when we got time.
No, I want to for Mike. I want to bring up for Mike. I want to know how black do you have to be to compete for Miss Black UT? They said she was not black enough.
We're moving right on up to a double wide here.
I
ain't we?
didn't get my powder, man. What?
Yeah, I'm moving up to a double wide.
Moving up the devil.
Well, here we are. All right, sorry about all this.
Man.
Mike Lee will be here for 30 minutes, of course. Richard Franklin, good to have you on again.
Hey,
Robert Muhammad, it's always good to have you on. Don Zimmerman,
Fighting that traffic to get over here. I'll tell you what.
and an empty seat for Gavino Fernandez
If he shows
Jr.
up. Yeah. if
I don't
shows
think he
up.
will, because usually he
doing
shows
the
up right at 7 o'clock. Or anyway, before we get into city finance, the governor signed sanctuary city bill,
SB4.
SB4, on Facebook. I know we all probably got some kind of opinion, you might say. Something we could say about it, I'm sure. And I understand Greg Abbott already filed something in the courts to help to fight it now before it gets to the courts. What was that?
Which doesn't make much sense, does it?
File for
'Cause
injunctive
it-
relief.
you know it's going to a lawsuit, and it's probably headed to the Supreme Court anyway.
we wasting a lot of money.
Yeah, let's start with Mike Lee. Do you have anything you'd like to say about this?
Yeah, I'll be short because most of these members on the panel can be very loquacious if they want to, especially this one right here.
Be careful with those big words, Mike.
Who's one of the best friends I have in Austin. He may deny it, but anyway, that's my choice.
This chair,
On
you
the
sit down.
sanctuary city business,
He ain't got many friends.
I think it's always a safe course to try to follow federal law. And the federal law has been what it is since Obama was in office.
Concerning immigration.
So what's wrong with if the federal law says, there's such a thing as ICE, and it's okay to detain and investigate people who may be illegally here. What's wrong with it? But I am glad that this administration maybe, hopefully, will cut off the money to ensure that there will at least be compliance with federal law. I think the fact that the state has also passed a law regarding the issue is further reason to follow it. And I'm sure Richard always has something to say.
Richard always has something to say. And
Actually,
I'm sure he's got plenty to say on this. So
No, seriously, I have several different ways of looking at this, but I'm a student of history, and I go back to the fact that we like to tout our Judeo-Christian values in this country. So, although I'm having problems with the way this SB4 thing even came into existence, as the fact that the sheriff decided to raise the specter so that everybody could see issues out here, as opposed to the fact that we were already dealing with those issues because Barack Obama was the deporter in chief while he was in office and nobody said a word. Which was a problem for me. So suddenly we get in office and we decide we're going to be a good Democrat and raise the issue for everyone.
Thank you.
In which case a lot of people suffered and a lot of people are really suffering now. And now we want to protest. So that's a problem for me. On the other side of the coin is, I just let you know this. Hebrews 13:2 says, do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. Romans 15:7 says, therefore, welcome one another as Christ has welcomed you for the glory of God. Matthew 25:35 says, I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. And I was a stranger and you welcomed me. And that's just, if I would go down here and talk about the sojourner and the fact that the Judeo-Christian society we live in speaks about welcoming people into our shores. And I know we keep talking about the safety issue and et cetera, and that's the way we couch it. The reality is this is a process of keeping people away from us that we don't like, that we don't understand, that we don't care about. And the reality is until we start caring about one another and get away from false borders, and because when the hurricanes come, they don't stop at the border of the United States or at the border of Mexico. The reality is we really got to start being one race, one human race, and start caring about each other in a real way and stop all this nonsense.
can I throw something in right there on that? We are talking about aliens that commit violent criminal crimes, not just. We're not going to just start deporting people who are in the country illegally, unless they wind up in jail for something, right?
We've just deported people who own businesses. We've deported mothers and daughters. We've deported people in this country just recently, and it was just reported. She reported someone who had their papers already. So the reality is we're just swooping people up because of the color of their skin, and not because of their character, because that's impossible to judge. And when we're talking about being violent in this country, some of the most violent people we're allowing to stay here should have been sent to islands long ago. So the reality is we really need to change the way we do things in this country, and we just refuse to do so.
All right, Ma.
See, somebody left a chair open for me.
Have a seat.
Well, I don't know when this came out. I don't know if it came out today or whatever.
She
but
did have her chemo last Friday. Her scan's been good.
I'm trying to wait my turn.
I just want a quickie here, okay?
Absolutely.
That is a quickie.
Texas passed a strong sanctuary city bill filed by the state senator Charles Perry from District 28, Lubbock, Texas, who sent the press release below. In the last session of 2015, two GOP senators voted against a bill that would have banned sanctuary cities in Texas. Sheriffs and police chiefs in Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, and Austin have opposed banning sanctuary city policies, even though these cities deny being safe havens for illegal aliens. Families like Buddy Funderburg, our friend.
Been on the show before.
He's been on the show many times, and we had him down here with the Remembrance Project. Remember when we had him on? Yeah. His son and daughter-in-law were hit from behind on 95 out there in Bastrop County, and it was up underneath.
Shoved them right down the road until the car finally quit.
200 yards, and there's still marks on the road today. And anyways, they were both killed, and they were very, very young. Just sons, all that other stuff. But anyways, go on here. Families like Buddy Funderburg knows the truth. Mr. Funderburg's son and daughter-in-law, Billy and Natalie Funderburg, were violently crashed into from behind by a drunk illegal alien driving over 65 miles per hour last June. Billy and Natalie were dragged for over 200 feet. And this is the picture of him here. Anyways, it says that he passed the bill, blah, 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 blah. Banning sanctuary cities is about stopping officials who have sworn to enforce the law from helping people who commit terrible crimes evade immigration detainers. This guy had been in and out of jail for drunk DUI, and he was back out again after he'd been deported a couple times. And so he's back, and then when the car stopped, he ran off. Okay? Senate Bill 4 protects all Texans through uniform application of the law without prejudice.
I'm sorry.
I want to thank my colleagues in the state and House, especially Representative Guerin, for carrying the bill in the House. I also want to thank Governor Greg Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, Attorney General Ken Paxton, and Speaker Strauss for their commitment to banning sanctuary cities. Blah, 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 blah. Anyways, this has to do with the Remembrance Project. And anyways, this was like a little press release put out by the Remembrance Project. So anyways, I've been asked to read that little bit, so there, I did my bit, now I'm off.
Thank you, ma'am.
Careful there.
Robert Muhammad.
Nicely done.
Well,
That's my
you know,
thing with speed reading.
Nicely done.
anytime we start to, in America, we start to doing things and they have tied to them a moral compass or a moral obligation that's being used, you know, I always say, well, let's look behind the curtains and see what morals are going on behind those curtains. Because in America, we have a very checkered past. And it's been proven time and time again that when we go to aid people and to help people and we use the quote-unquote moral compass that the country is supposed to have, when we look behind or underneath the surface, it's much more than going to go and free women or going to go liberate individuals from around the country. It's always has something to do with some foreign interest or some monetary gain or something like that. That being said, so I question those types of things. But addressing that indirectly, but directly, I just wanted to cite a study really briefly. I was looking at a segment of, I think it was 60 Minutes. It was titled Rogue Elephants. And what happened is in South Africa, individuals, the government decided they wanted to.
Yeah, I read your piece on that too, not to interrupt you. But it was
You
very good.
read the piece on. So they
I read everything you read.
They decided.
Not personal, you understand?
They decided that the population of elephants were getting too large. So they decided to start culling the population of elephants. So they started killing the adult elephants, right? First they tried to transport them to another park. This was the 80s. They didn't have the contraptions. They didn't have the technology to transport these large elephants. Didn't happen. They started killing them. And so what they did was they took the children, the babies from the elephants and transported them to another national park. Well, fast forward 10, 12 years later, these babies are now teenagers. And what they found is that white rhinos were being killed, the ones that they had protected, right? So when they thought it was poachers initially, but the horns were being left intact. I'm trying to say this as fast as possible.
That's right.
And so they began to monitor the rhinos, and they found out that these teenage elephants were the culprits, and they developed rap sheets for these teenage elephants, and they even had pictures of them. They said this one was in the area at the time that this rhino was killed, and they started monitoring them, and they tranquilized them, and they tested their blood, and they said there were high levels of testosterone in these teenage male elephants. So they didn't want to kill these elephants, and they tried to come up with a solution. And even when they looked at the families, the mother and the newborn elephants, the mothers would not move. They were not moving around like they normally. They were not caring for the children. They went back. They said, "Hey, look, we got an idea. Now we have the technology. Let's transport these adult male bulls and put them with and in the same environment with these teenage elephants." What they found within weeks is that the ecosystem was restored. The white rhinos were not being killed anymore. They tested the blood of the teenage elephants, and the testosterone level was back to normal. The female elephants were up around taking care of the baby elephants again. The ecosystem was destroyed. My question is, when you start deporting families, when you start deporting men and women and adults, then what type of ramifications are we going to have to deal with down the road when these children are left without the proper guidance, the proper care, even on a biological level? See, that this study shows me that on a biological level, their bodies started to respond to adults not being around. So biologically, their biological clock said you need this level of testosterone because now you have to provide for yourself, you have to protect yourself and your family. These things have to happen, but they didn't have the right guidance from adult elephants, and so they began to act out because they could not control the levels of testosterone that was in. So what happens 10 to 15 years from now when you have the babies of individuals that have been deported that could not get back into the country? What happens, and what happens in our cities? What are the ramifications of that? We always seem to do very good at thinking short term, but what happens in the long term? What do we have to deal with then? What type of money have to be thrown at a problem that would come out of this type of situation?
Very good. Don Zimmerman.
So, of course, I agree with my colleague Mike Lee here for the reasons he stated. I support SB 4, of course. But I want to back up and make sure everybody remembers. Remember the jury nullification in the 1850s of the northern states refusing to follow fugitive slave laws? Because they looked at the federal government's laws for the benefit of the South. It says if a slave escapes to the north, northern states have to return them, and it's a federal crime. If you don't, and the northern states said, nah, not going to do it. So the country has a history of people passing judgment against federal laws. So I'm down with that. So I think you need to, when you look at the federal law, you got to say, does it comply with God's law? Is it not immoral? You have to do that. So I look at the immigration law and say, you know what? In the same way that each of us have the right to decide who comes into our house and helps themselves to our pantry, as a community, as a state, as a nation, we have to be able to decide who comes across our border and helps themselves to public services or what have you. So I don't understand the people saying that immigration laws are immoral. To me, that's a ludicrous statement. Immigration law, it's immoral. I'm like, what? You might as well say that my lock on my front door is immoral because I'm deciding who comes into my house and helps themselves to my stuff. So, but let me go back to something. I'm so glad Richard opened up the Bible. God, I love that.
Still open.
God, I love that. I love that Bible. And I'm going to back you up. I'm going to back you up from the New Testament. Let's go back to the Old Testament, the original.
That in here too, yeah.
All right, God's people delivered out of Egypt.
Oh, yes, Leviticus, yeah.
There we go. And so what did God say? You have to welcome the foreigner. You can't discriminate against the foreigner. You can't cheat the foreigner. But you know what, Richard? They had to follow God's covenant. They had to follow the law. They had to follow God's law. You don't follow the law. If you're an Israelite, you get cut off from your people if you don't follow the law. So it doesn't matter. Hang on.
I'm pretty sure that business owner was following the law.
You have to follow the covenant. The Bible is about covenant people, and the covenant is not based on your ethnicity. It's not based on your identity as a Hebrew or a Semite or an Israelite or a foreigner, black, white, brown. It's not based on any of that. It's based on covenant, and you follow the law, and if you don't follow the law, you're cut off from your people, irrespective of where you came from. All right, what does that got to do with SB 4? Everything. Everything. Nothing. The law is legitimate. Immigration law is legitimate.
Slavery was the law.
It's a legitimate federal law. Immigration law.
Slavery was the law. You went back to 1850s. Slavery was the law.
I just said the people have to pass judgment on federal laws. The people passed judgment on federal laws, and they did.
That's what I'm saying.
And they
He
nullified the fugitive slave laws back in the 1850s. The people did that. They have a right to do that. So when I look at immigration law, tell me why that's immoral, and you can't. You don't have any argument.
Absolutely can.
It is not immoral.
I'm looking at
it
what
is
I'm
a
saying
moral
right here.
law,
Leviticus
and it needs to be upheld.
19:34 says, "You shall treat the stranger who sojourns with you as the native among you, and you shall love him as yourself, for you are strangers."
You think that exists in a vacuum without behavior? That has everything to do with people's behavior.
Nowhere on does
if
it
somebody
say, and
comes
by the
in
way,
and steals
here's the
from
behavior.
you,
It doesn't say that. It doesn't say on here you got to have the behavior.
Are you kidding?
Well,
You don't
well,
understand
yeah,
that? You think that's unconditional? You
God
can
did-
come in my country and
I
and
am the
commit
Lord your
murder
God
and
says, and he
theft,
didn't say
and
I
you
have
have a right to
conditions
be
for
here?
this.
No, you don't.
All right, hold on.
No, you
Go ahead,
don't.
Robert.
In America, a land that was taken from the people who were here before we
here
got
we
here,
go.
you're now
Yeah,
going
here
to
we
say we
go.
put laws
Yeah.
in place, and now we're going to talk about laws. We put laws in place from people who said we had manifest destiny to take land from people. I'll go all the way back to the fact that you've broken treaties to
on.
take land.
Richard,
We have a treaty of
Richard,
Hidalgo, the
Richard.
Guadalupe,
People of the
Hidalgo, and talk
Bible
about it.
took land from people that had it. God's people
Richard.
went into Palestine and took it away from the
Whoa.
Philistines. They took it away from the Canaanites.
Whoa.
Hold on,
That's God's people, God's
I think Robert want to
I
get
have to
some.
Yeah,
disagree.
let's get Robert in here for a few minutes.
You know, everything that we're talking about, everything we're talking about,
Hot in here.
everything
Yeah.
we're talking about is subject to interpretation.
Exactly.
And
Context. It has context.
And in every society,
It has context.
during every dispensation of time, every prophet that brought, when Moses brought the Torah, when Jesus brought the gospel, when Muhammad brought the Holy Quran, after they were dead and gone or removed from the scene, individuals that were left behind began to interpret what these great ones had brought, and they began to use it to govern the way that they wanted to govern. They began to use the good prophet's name and the word of God to shield whatever practice they wanted to present. And so when we are using the word of God to protect law that's being put out, I mean, you know, there is a history of the use of the Christian theology to enslave people.
Well, right
let
there.
us not forget that. So everything is subject to interpretation and context based on the individual and what the individual is attempting to gain. And so, but all I'm saying is this, and back to that, we have to consider ramifications. We have to consider what the fallout, what the byproduct, what the side effects of what's being done and when it's being done. You know, quite often we think about the here and the now, you know, and so, you know, so since we're talking about scripture, the scripture says that the sins of the father would be passed down to who? The children. Not because there's some God sitting on a cloud waving a wand over the children saying, oh, your father sinned, so now I'm going to give it to you. But no, there's a culture and there's a lifestyle and there's a mindset that's being passed from generation to generation. And so my mother suffers from hypertension and high blood pressure, but I have never gone into the doctor because I broke a culture of a dietary culture, and so now I don't have to suffer from the same ailments that my mother suffered from, that my grandmother suffered from, that my But if we continue to live according to the same standard, the same practices, we'll have the same results that the fathers had, and so. For one, I mean, when we're talking about morality, please, America cannot stand up and use a backbone and stand up straight and look God in the eye and say we've been moral and that everything that we're doing according to the law is according and it lines up with your law, is parallel to your law. No, because I'm sitting in this seat as a black man in America and I know the history and I know the present, and the present, today is based on yesterday, and tomorrow will be based on today. And then, until and unless we get this thing together, we get this thing right, my children's children will be sitting in this seat and we'll be talking about another bill, and we'll be talking about another group of people that, and maybe it won't be us saying somebody's trespassing, it'll be somebody else saying that there's another group of people trespassing.
Put perfectly. But there is this separation of church and state, and they don't want to do it, do they?
No, ma'am.
They just don't.
We shouldn't, I don't think.
It's
impossible. It's impossible to separate God from politics and religion from law. It's impossible.
Well, some people
Utterly
do.
impossible.
Well,
People
as
do
I
a
was
very
saying,
good job
it's
of
getting
acting like it's
I
not.
know it's getting hard to time.
Okay, so
Impossible.
this
be done.
theological. This is a very
Can't
We
be
don't
done.
separate it
interesting
when we want to separate it.
discussion we're having
And
here.
that's
Can't
the
be
thing.
done.
That discussion
We
is
use it the
everything.
way
That's
we
what I
use
say.
everything
That's one of my sayings lately. Is stop the hate, stop the violence, stop the killing.
Look, Chris,
That's my thing lately. So we need to learn to
if they
discuss.
gotta sneak into the country, should they have made a law when they're here?
Yes,
You
First
saying
of all,
this businessman, he had to do something
I go back to
beyond.
what sneaking in the country even
but
means.
my ancestors came in the legal way, and it's not that difficult.
Not that hard.
It's not that difficult to
There's,
come here.
you
They-
have
You
confidence
talking to a
all
black
around.
man, I ain't buying
These
none
guys
of
were
that noise.
drug here. They were
and
shipped
I'm
here
gonna
against
tell you
their
this.
will.
I can agree on a lot of levels, but there are some levels when we're talking about
Yeah.
when we're. I mean, it's kind of unfair for us to have this conversation, maybe to a certain degree, because we're sitting at the table with individuals that have a history, and we know we had black codes and Jim Crow laws where if a black man looked under a white woman's dress on the line drying,
Yeah.
that could be used to bring up intent.
If he wants
And
to
a
walk
black
down,
man
if he
would
wants
be
to walk
lynched
down
and
the
would
street,
be murdered
Yeah.
based on intent. So come on, we just go back and watch the first motion picture that was brought out. Look at the image that's being displayed of black men and this white woman running and rather to be ravaged by, and I'm not saying this, but I'm saying she jumped off a cliff to get away from this ghoulish looking black man and whatnot. So I mean, you know,
So we've come a long way.
See, so we criminalize people, which is what happens in America. We
I don't know about
criminalize
that
those that
now.
we don't like.
we've
And-
come a lot.
Okay,
We've
hold
come
on,
a long
man.
way
Yeah.
financially
So I,
and technologically.
so I bring you, I
Now,
pull
hold
you
on,
over,
man.
so you understand how it works. Because one of your problems, we don't talk about how it works.
Get a lot of money acting like criminals on the movies and then the gangster rap.
But I'm talking about in
They all wanna
reality.
be OG.
In America,
Not
I pull you
everybody.
over because the first thing we're going to say
Oh,
is
money,
you
nigga.
were suspected of a crime. Well, what crime were you suspected of? Because you pulled me over for no reason, but you just said my tail light was out. And suddenly my tail light is out, and now I got to show you my papers.
Sure, yeah.
I don't have my papers. No, I don't have my papers because I don't even know what that means.
You have
Because you
driver's
pulled me
license.
over illegally,
Yeah.
but you've made up a reason to
it
pull
is.
me over.
Driver's license, Richard.
You
No,
got
no.
driver's
How
First of
many-
all,
how
first of all,
many-
first of all,
how
first of all,
many-
first of all,
drive
you
on that
first of all,
license?
it's first of all, you
We're
created,
gonna
you
talk about
created,
some numbers.
you created.
How many
First of all, the
traffic
numbers don't reflect what you're
accidents-
saying.
How many
Don,
traffic
the numbers don't
accidents-
reflect what you're
How many
saying.
traffic accidents from people that don't have a driver's license? Why don't you have a driver's
Don,
license?
those
And what
things do
happens
not
is they
exist.
don't-
Those
What do you
things
mean
do
they
not
don't exist?
exist
They
in the
Of course
numbers
they
that you are
exist.
trying to portray.
They're
You got people out
huge
here.
numbers. They're significant numbers.
No, they're
People
not.
don't
No,
have
they
driver's
are
license. Why
not.
don't
And
you have a
the
driver's
Department of
license?
Justice already said they
You
do
don't
not
have a driver's
exist. that way.
license. You don't have car
So the
insurance.
so the
when you
piece is
crash
this.
into somebody,
First of all,
you don't have any
if you pull me over and we
responsibility
haven't
for
had an accident,
right.
if you just pull me over for the sake of pulling me over because I'm driving while having melanin, which is what happens in America historically. Driving while having melanin doesn't matter what the issue is at the end of the day. You have now created a process where I am guilty until proven innocent, and the first thing you're going to do is ask me for my papers. I could be Afro-Cuban, and next thing I know, you're shipping me
Hold
out.
on here. You get pulled over, catch your driver's license and proof of
Well,
insurance.
first of all, why are you pulling me over?
You're in a
cops,
car
that's what they
accident.
do.
I
You're
didn't
in
say,
a car accident.
but you don't understand.
Let's
I'm not
forget
talking about a car
about- no,
accident.
no, no.
I'm talking about
You
the fact that
went-
I myself have been pulled over for the sake of being pulled over.
No,
So if you pull me over and say,
no,
officer,
we're not talking about that. We're talking about people
That's
that are in a
exactly
car
what we're talking
accident.
about.
No, we're
That's
in a,
exactly-
we're
no,
people that are in
because
a
that's
car
not what you-
accident.
I know-
people-
I know you guys
people
wanna live
are
in an
a car
ideal world.
accident. People are in a
Hold
car
You want to talk in an
accident.
ideal world, but I'm trying to tell you the realities,
no,
Don.
ideal world, the real world. The real
I'm talking about
world
the real
is
world happens
illegal
right now.
Aliens are causing traffic accidents. They have no driver's license and no insurance.
You can't even say that.
No,
You can't
I
even
don't-
say
you
that
can't even
because
say
it's
that.
not true.
It's true.
It's not true.
Illegal aliens have car accidents.
Hey,
They have no driver's license and they have no insurance, and it's a problem. Not a
No,
problem
it's not.
for you.
You're making
but
up
it's a
some
problem.
numbers out of
hold on
the
here.
person that got
I
arrested
served
in
in
the
the city
person that
council.
they
I
shipped
see
back
these
out of Illinois
numbers.
was a
Now-
shop
Right,
owner.
and it's
Had been
political
a
agenda.
business
It's
owner for over
political
25
agenda.
years.
Missouri City.
They didn't pull over.
And then we're going to talk about finances.
You know,
We're
it's-
gonna
it-
talk about
Well,
finances.
Mike, me and Robert,
No,
Roddy about to leave
no,
it.
it-
I don't think
No,
we'll
it-
get to that one.
It,
guys
ju-
have to
it
go?
just seems to me that
Yeah, his show comes out at 8.
perfection is expected from imperfect men, and that's impossible.
Where's Gary Teal?
And
Yeah, what
what,
happened to
what,
Gary?
what I guess the question I have is, do the people
What the heck is that?
Come to get it.
Hell,
Do
for
the-
me, it's time to hit the ground. That's what the hell. See?
I just gotta get
See
my
the
license
response
out. Make
was
sure
all
it's straight
down.
now it's time to get up, get the wall, spread your cheeks.
See? He knows the drill.
And if you move a different, if one of us flinch, that's,
See? We know the deal. We know the drill. That's the difference. I'm a 60-year-old black man. I
Hold
went
on,
through the drill.
What's the drill? You gotta
Excuse
get
me,
your driver's license
excuse
out.
me.
No.
But it seems like to
You
me,
look
it
like the
seems
person
like
we were
to
trying to
me
come and arrest you
that
today.
people are expecting perfection from imperfect people, and people are really, and that's never going to happen. So to me, the question becomes: do people in a society have a right to get together to decide how to deal with things,
That's good.
good, bad, ugly? Do they have that right?
well, that's what's been happening from since the beginning of time.
You know, and
Yeah.
if you get a bunch, if you get, to me, government exists to help people live together. The government is made by imperfect people, so they're going to have imperfect occurrences. Period.
My head's spinning right now.
Too much?
I'm amazed we're having this conversation because, you know, and I agree, but there's always a context to everything. I mean, there've been governments in place that have oppressed people from generation after generation, and we can't sit here and say that. And I understand law, and I understand that laws should exist and they should govern a civilized society, you know. But we have to make sure that law, and I'm not speaking specifically about SB4. I'm just saying, as Richard mentioned earlier, that let's just look at the crime bill. We know how it unjustly it was imbalanced with crack cocaine and powder cocaine and those types of things. And let's just not act like these things don't exist, or not didn't exist, but exist.
No, they
to this
did
day.
exist.
And so, and yes, we have to. You know, people thought that Minister Farrakhan was in support of Donald Trump because he agreed with his statement on vetting Muslims from certain areas of the country. But there was a context to it. He said because the United States government has caused havoc through its foreign policy in these particular areas and has created the type of sentiment that gives rise and fuel to hatred, that yes, you should vet the individuals that are coming in, because what you're doing in the name of the American people that they don't even know that you're doing has and is producing, not in all cases, but is producing some of the sentiments that would allow groups like ISIS to recruit, you know, in certain areas. So you got to be very careful with who comes through your borders, because you may be inviting something in that will undo your entire government.
You mean the survivor from that drone strike who didn't get killed when they attacked that wedding party? That'll piss you off, huh?
Well,
I know we've done a lot of that. And
Austin Finances, before you go. Austin Finances.
Oh, the finances?
give me, just give us a statement.
You mean like this crazy transportation thing that passed?
Prop 1,
Prop
720
1?
million bond. That's one of them. Well, this is budget season.
Well,
It's
No,
budget
no,
season.
wasn't
The Austin, the general fund is going to be pushing $1 billion.
no,
right?
the problem, the whole problem I have with that is, and with this so-called gentrification thing, is that there are policies that can be utilized to further and advance people who are already in the community. For example, there's some amount of money that's supposed to be set aside for bicycle lanes. How much is that? Probably.
It's
I don't
tens
know,
of
I can do
millions
that
of dollars.
probably.
If you're
All
talking
I'm saying is
Prop
why couldn't they set aside?
tens of millions.
Why couldn't there be a portion of the money set aside for low interest homes for people who live on the east side to develop their own, to make repairs or upgrade their own houses
You mean like
and
elderly
stay where
people
they
with
are?
holes up their nose?
But instead of something like that, they want to put in bicycle lanes instead of helping the people who are already there. And to me,
well,
that whole transportation,
Yeah, I'd like to hear Robert too. before
Bull-
he has to go
bull
on that
crap
one, 'cause
was-
I'm sorry
was-
we didn't get around to the.
you know, I call it just for my own. I call it a bond issue to facilitate a family of 2 men and a dog, or 2 women and a dog, and to hell with the families who are already there. That's what it does.
Poor dog. Go there, go there.
Poor dogs.
But to me, that's a policy decision.
Yeah, they do. Got
That
dogs.
we want 2 men and a dog, or 2 women and a dog, and the families already on the east side. We don't care whether they stay there or not. We putting these bicycle lanes in for the 2 men with the dog and the 2 women with the dog.
that's a part of the plan. It's not a matter of
Now you on another show.
Like Gabino had.
You talked to Robert. You talked about something that was put together by Dr. Butler at UT. Dr. John Butler years ago at UT, and that's being carried out.
He had something to do with it, and my point is that when you set out to develop, and you have a 30-year plan, you have a 40-year plan to turn a city into a technology hub, and you know, and you project how many tech startups are going to come. You project how many partnerships are going to come. You project how many jobs are going to come, and you are even projecting. Since we're talking about traffic, you can even project the population increase in the city. Now, in order for it to increase, you have to look at real estate. You have to look at where these people that we lost a part of the NCAA tournament years ago because there was not the with the infrastructure didn't have the hospitality infrastructure that it needed. So we lost that because people had to stay in hotels in San Antonio, you know. So here we have been one of those fastest growing cities in the country for some time now. So there had to be an area targeted and marketed to those that were coming in. So gentrification doesn't happen in a vacuum. And I'm tired of people acting like it does. But we could ask the Native Americans something about gentrification. We could ask the Mexicans something about gentrification. We can ask a lot of people that lost land about gentrification and the plan. We talk about zoning, we talk about things, but look, there's no way in a 10-year span a population of a certain ethnic group increases by 400%, and then those that inhabited that area for generations is reduced by 60-some-odd% and 40-some-odd%, unless there are some individuals that have a hand in helping to produce the environment where the would change like that. And so, okay, yeah, jobs are coming in, but it's just like going into a country when you rebuild the country and a corporation comes in. The people that run the country want to know, well, how many jobs are being brought in for my people, not for your people that's traveling with you. You know, so if you're bringing in tech jobs, then how many of the corporations that are coming in are going to open their doors for the native Austinites that live in these areas that now can't afford because the manufacturing industry is dead, you know, that need the new training, they need the green training, they need all of the technological training that's coming in while you're recruiting from the West Coast, while you're recruiting from the East Coast, and the population that inhabited the historic East Austin corridors being pushed out into the far eastern part of Travis County. So somebody planned this. It didn't just happen.
So if we back up, it's a good point about planning. So if we back up a couple of steps, I mean, would you guys, is there any consensus here about how to fix the problem? Is the problem to eliminate the centralized planning or change the centralized planning?
Change.
Yeah, see, so to me, it's to eliminate the planning.
I would eliminate it altogether.
Yeah, eliminate it. Oh, we got to
if we don't
eliminate
agree.
it. We agree.
Literally, because the reality is, if it is the system itself and the people within the system have been doing this all along, to get them to change their minds doesn't work.
It's not going to work. Get rid of the planning.
You can't do that.
Centralized planning.
It's not going to happen.
If we agree on all of that, then what do we put in place?
My question is,
I'll start.
what you talking
because
about?
we start
Robert?
getting rid of systems.
No,
now we can talk about a lot of systems.
It's a fair question. It's a fair question. So I would
lot of
again
systems.
point you to how did the city of Houston? It's got a lot of problems,
Yeah,
but how did they accomplish a better mix of housing and less segregation? They have less economic segregation than we have here, and they don't have planners. So it's a great question, but I think it's when you get rid of these planners, you'll have to have some. You can have deed restrictions where communities can decide how they want to be, and they write it into their deed restrictions, and they enforce that through the courts, not through city bureaucracies. That you just have property rights and say, all right, our community is going to look like this. Here's what we want to do, and if you want to change it, you're going to have to go to court and make some legal argument because here's our property. Here's what we want to do with it, and that might be a way to do it. But you got to get rid of the central planners, and if there's no commitment to get rid of the central planning, it's never going to get fixed. It's just
Well,
gonna
to
get
me,
worse.
to get any of these kind
Yes.
of
Just a quickie.
Yeah.
Just a quickie. Today I had a Facebook post or somewhere I heard it on the news that overtime that they're paying firemen, policemen, the electrical workers, the utility workers, all this other stuff
71 million.
is eating up the budget like crazy.
Yep.
So there's my 2 cents.
Yep.
Thank
It
you,
is
ma'am.
eating the budget up. Yep.
well,
I
to
can understand
piggyback
the
on Robert's
responders,
point,
but the other guys.
The other guy's a waste of our money.
Robert pointed out a few things that can give rise to the types of situations that we're talking about. Now, to me, if these things are a matter of arise not by accident but by policy and the actions of people, I think what you need to change are the people who are engaged in these actions somehow.
I would agree.
But to keep voting the same people in all the time.
But if you don't change the mindset, then somebody just replaces them with the same mindset.
That's a very good
to
point.
fulfill the same type of action and activity. You know, so when you start talking about uprooting systems, hey, now you're talking some serious talk. You're talking radical talk.
And that ain't gonna happen around here. They take you out to hang you when you start talking radical around here.
You get unelected for office, but you don't get hung.
Same difference.
And you don't get a bayonet in the gut if you lose a contest. Like the Alamo defender.
I'm
bayonet in the gut.
I'm
if you
just-
lose. You know, we got it good
Here's the thing.
Somebody
First of
will
all, we got to
yell at you,
recognize.
slander you in the news, but you don't have to take a bayonet.
Well, here's the thing. Whenever government makes anything, it's supposed to try to make something happen through policy and procedures, practice, whatever it might be. It must be specific with respect to the outcomes. And we don't design our policies based on specific outcomes. We base them on some ideal that's out there in the ether and say, well, it's not tied to anything actually happening that's going to. We want to benefit black people. All right, let's make a policy that benefits black people, and that they will actually say benefit black people. At the end of the day, what does that mean? No one said what was the benefit going to be. What does that look like?
Somebody like me stands up and says that's racist.
Well, no,
we shouldn't be doing something for or against
absolutely
anybody
can.
based
You
on
absolutely
their
can because
ethnicity.
you have to do corrective action, not affirmative action, and there's a distinct difference. But when you do that, because when we're talking about historically, you've had codes, you've had laws, you've had covenants put in place that have made sure that people had no access, had no ability to ever change their circumstances. Well, if you realize that's what was in place initially, then what you have to do is go back and correct that action, and that has to be a specific action. It can't be an ether action. It can't say, well, we're going to set up I don't know what the 1964, 1965 process and said, well, it's the great. No, because that wasn't designed to actually change anything. It was designed to address it, but not fix it. And there's a distinct difference. Well, what I'm saying is if you hobble people by saying, here we're going to put some money out there, but there was nothing tied to that to make something outcomes happen. How do I change the outcomes? So if you don't work back from the outcomes, then you're never going to make anything happen. When I say the government is a nonprofit, just like those people you're talking about right now, firemen, EMS, everything that's in the government is nonprofit. It doesn't produce anything. But if it's going to incentivize people to do something, to make something happen, then that has to be specific. And that's not what we do right now in government. It never has. And that's by design because it's a big money suck. Government's a big money suck right now. It's not saying I'm going to. If you're going to build a road, the road has to go somewhere. I just looked at roads. I got news for you right now. There's roads out there on 71 by the airport. There's a walkway. There's walkways by the airport. Do you know who lives by the airport?
New walkway. I know what you're talking about.
Have you been out there?
I've been down there, yeah.
So you spent money.
Giant sidewalk, man. You're like, what the hell?
So it's lit up. I'm a wonder that even airplanes can land at night because the lights are so bright. They're brighter than the runway lights. So I'm a wonder if a plane comes in sideways, the plane's going to go and land on 71.
land on
I'm
that
telling
sidewalk, is
you,
what he
because the sidewalk is
I've
gorgeous.
seen that.
And I'm telling you, I know what happened. It was the road to nowhere.
Well, Harrison
It's a
Ford,
road to
remember, he
nowhere, but
lands on
somebody
the
had to fill a square
right.
to say we're going to provide infrastructure and walkways in eastern Travis County. That money came down from somewhere. It was drawn down from the government, but it wasn't designed to do something to help people. It was designed so somebody could spend money and pay their brother-in-law. And this happens over and over and over again. So the money isn't designed to help someone. When I say it's got to be designed, well, we got a new road in our neighborhood. It ain't got no lights. So now people are using it to dump bodies. They're dumping mattresses. It's literally dump bodies, y'all. Because now it's a dark lane that you put in that doesn't benefit me. It doesn't benefit anyone. It wasn't designed to help anyone. It was just designed to put something out there and spend some money.
For people to make
Designed for
profit.
somebody to make some money.
And if we keep spending money
That's why
like
the government
that,
school bonds are the same way.
and it's again,
Round
there's
school
nothing
bonds,
at the
same
end
thing.
of that to say this is what we want to have happen.
Make
We
money
want
for
these
somebody.
kids to be lifted up by the school system, regardless of what's. And this is how we're going to spend the money and make it happen. You can have a bucket of money and misspend it all day long and still not get the results. But you spend a lot of money. Money at the end of the day doesn't change the outcome. It has to be specific.
What do we do about it? How do we elect people that will stop this kind
Well,
of
we
thing?
ain't gonna do that because we're not part of the machine. The people who are part of the machine like spending money and paying the brother-in-law.
I think you're probably right. You've never been elected.
Nope.
He got elected and kicked
I've been
out.
I've been a school board member.
Yeah, how long did that last?
That lasted for 3 years until I ran for county commissioner. I've been a school board member, and that's exactly what I went in to do was go and look.
That's
we
good.
have to change the way this happens.
School
and
board's
you'll see
bad,
that
too.
But, man, and when you have
Yeah, you're talking about wasting money.
you have
Yeah,
money.
a lot.
You have money
They
in
waste
school
money.
districts, but you also understand that when you get there, the first thing you have to do is go in and say, "Wait a minute, how are we spending money?" Well, my district is very frugal with the way we're spending money at the time. So you got to say, "Okay, this is what we're going to get out of that." Because you're in one of the poor districts, you don't have a lot of money. What we need to understand is there are districts that don't have a lot of money.
Y'all hanging around a
And
little
they-
late, but that's all right, because I do like to hear what Robert Muhammad and Mike Lee have to say. And all I can think of is we got to find somebody to start. I never liked term limits, because then like Robert Muhammad says, they'll just put in another
We have
manager.
term limits, don't we? Don't we have term limits? We don't.
Yeah,
limits on
every
what?
2 years we can vote them out.
Term limits on school
On
boards,
politicians.
on the things that, but not the people who matter, not the ones who are making decisions that are changing our lives.
Well, if we get the right people elected, we can
And
do
the
that.
term limits will make them actually do their work, because now you don't have to get on worry about getting reelected all the
No,
time.
the term limits, they'll just they'll pick a guy and run him, and when that's up, they'll pick another guy and run him.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
You're
but term
just
limits
gonna
are
have
still term limits are still good, because when you get rid of incumbents, even though the system is going to try to put their guy in, there's still a risk that their guy's not going to win.
you get
Well,
6 years,
well, the thing
term
is,
limits
6
are
years
still
as a
good.
representative, 12 years as a senator. I mean,
limits
the
are
reality
good.
is that changes the conversation.
I support
I've
term
been an
limits.
advocate of term limits all the time, because to me, new blood is all. It's always good to
better,
get
huh?
new blood and new ideas.
You got people who are 90 years old and
And-
in Congress, like, you go, are you kidding me?
I always
Yeah, we
Can't
need
even-
term limits.
Can't
man.
even
Oh,
think
no.
More
anymore.
term limits.
I-
We need more term
thinking
limits
10
in more
years ago.
places.
Somebody else hands a piece of paper and they go out there and try to read it. You know, so you haven't had
See,
original
Richard,
thought.
so
This is
you-
somebody else giving you
your
that.
term
This-
limits. So we agree on term limits.
We ain't gonna disagree on
Too late, y'all
everything.
agree on.
We agree on stuff.
Well, to me, I thought I'd look at term limits as a way of maybe having at least a chance of limiting the impact of money, or at least it has to be spread around. It can't just be one. I just think it's not right for someone to.
Be there for 100 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Because
the
they're
people
just
we
so
got now?
entrenched that
Like
they
the
forget
people we
why
got
they were
now,
there in the
yeah.
first place.
You
Yeah.
know.
Can't get rid of them.
Congressmen staying in there for life.
And they
Can't
keep the
get rid of
money,
them.
and then
20, 30
they
years.
help other other people
does it
running
benefit?
who want to help them.
Right.
It doesn't help
Whoever
any.
builds that road,
As-
Richard
as
was
I
talking about,
said,
they gotta go
I
through it.
always say,
go ahead and look and find out who built that road. Who built that? Who got paid for that?
In government, of, by, and for politicians.
Yeah.
And to me, term limits is the way to do that, because it's no longer a career.
So, but you got term limits at the city right now. You got a city council that is term limited. But does that change the way city council actually operates? We had the same thing with 10-1 that just came in, and has it actually changed the way city council operates? We are worried about,
Well,
the mindset.
the short answer is that, yeah, it did change it somewhat, but the power is concentrated in bureaucrats. The power is concentrated with the
did it change
bureaucrats. So it doesn't matter who's sitting on the city council. The bureaucrats spend the money and they call the shots.
They run the place, huh?
They run the place, yeah. Bureaucrats run the place. Look at your budget and the way the budget process works. You know that there's a full-time city government budget. There's a budget office. We don't need a budget office. Full-time bureaucrats that do nothing but decide how to spend your money. So they have a little machine going on with 13,000 employees about how they're going to spend the money. Then they show this forecast budget to the council. Here's the budget. And the council, elected council's like, weren't we supposed to have some kind of input into that budget? Well, you will.
Did they
You'll
budget
have
in those
some-
extra 21 people just to spend the money on the bond?
So what the-
21 extra people
Yeah,
to spend the
21
money
extra
on the
parasites.
bond.
All right.
I'll get one of these jobs.
So then it goes. Here's what happened. They put out this bloated, ridiculous budget that spends all the money. Your elected council doesn't spend anything. So the bureaucrats decide how all the money's going to be spent. They spend the next 3 or 4 months having bureaucrats come in to argue about why they need that money. We got to have this money. We got to have this money. We got to have this money. It's almost like brainwashing. Your council members sit there like a mushroom, and they get lectured for hour after hour slideshows and PowerPoints. Got to have this money. We have cost drivers. Our costs are on and on and on. Okay. Finally, when you get into September, well, we got 2 weeks left to pass the budget. Let's hear from the people in September, and there's 2 weeks left. So the bureaucrats spent 50 weeks telling you how the money's going to be spent, and now you got 2 weeks for the community to chime in.
To comment.
What a scam. And I said to them, I said, this is exactly backwards. You get 2 weeks as bureaucrats, and we get 50 weeks to decide what we're going to do.
Okay,
Yeah.
I
like that.
know
I'm
you
with
can
that.
go on, and you can go on
I
too.
like that. I like that.
All right, hold on. I want to thank Robert for coming on. I know y'all stayed later, but I do appreciate you coming on. I don't know how we.
Thank you for having us.
Well, we never did
That was a
get
circus,
quite
huh? That's just a complete circus. But I thought that's what the trailer
Yeah,
park
that's
show
kind of like
was.
you
you
do
know?
anyway.
It's just a circus.
Now I got to invite you back on for our actual budget show. Because I know nobody can stay on
I
this
think that's a good
channel,
idea.
folks, because Mike Lee and Robert Muhammad and Gary
Teal.
Teal
Gary
are
Teal.
going to be coming on
Yeah.
as soon as we're out there in about 10, 12 minutes.
Oh, that's
And
right. I
us three will
was
stay here,
supposed
keep-
to leave after half the show. Huh?
You were supposed to leave after half the show because I know you got work.
Well, you got that long trip. three steps down the
Well,
hallway.
there's a little work you got to do before you actually go on.
What, you get
I
Power's
don't know,
head?
just-
What?
Little preparation.
Little
You
preparation.
do
So I
some
didn't know
show
if you
prep.
wanted to hurry up and leave or not. 'Cause you only
Man,
got
stay
10
off my
minutes.
head, man. Why you have to go there, man?
Power this dome.
That's good. I like
You
that.
got some fuzz up there. You don't go like that, man.
Well, hell, y'all might as well just keep on and because I know y'all both got plenty more to say.
What's your program on today?
Robert and I and Gary gonna talk about gentrification and what we have to do.
Oh,
So
Some
we
things
probably
need to do
y'all
to,
talk about
try
what we
to-
didn't talk about here.
Keep continue from this one.
Yeah.
Well,
Heck
I
yeah.
knew we had to go into this immigration thing, Sanctuary City, because it's controversial. It's national news.
And you
I'm
don't want
always-
to wait.
Now hold on here, because I haven't told
And you
you
don't want to go into Miss Black UT.
No,
because
I
she
don't
wasn't
remember
black
Black
enough.
UT.
That one.
Hold on here. Hold on.
I said that looks like a beautiful woman to me. Is she's not black enough? I'm like, what the heck?
Let's go back here a minute to the Sanctuary Cities bill, because I've always somewhat different from my party on that, since I worked with so many, and I got no problem with some kind of guest worker program. I know that I wanted some way that they're working hard, and once you've been to Mexico, you can't blame them for wanting to be here. I mean, I'd get out too if I could. And I used to work with so many of them, and Hispanics are a family. Christmas and Easter is big times, and when you can't go home to grandma's house with the family because you're scared you can't get back up to the job you got, I didn't care for that. Now, I know Paul Berkman got hell for the driver's license bill, but I think that was actually a good bill that would have solved a lot of these problems. I don't know it all, but it seems to me like from what I saw, and I know Richard had some very good. But so did Don, and once you're here, you're supposed to behave. You would think that if you stuck into somebody's house and they're feeding you and they're letting you mow the yard, you ought to behave yourself. I mean, they're letting you sleep here and you're sleeping pretty good. Behave yourself.
but you've shipped out people who were students. You've shipped out people who were business owners. You've pulled out people
see, that's
who are
part of
doing
what I
right by this
disagree, if
country,
that
and,
actually
and,
happened.
and it absolutely. I'll send you the
Well,
articles. And
what else did he do?
and
He had to
he
do
was a
something else.
no. He was a business owner in the middle of Illinois, and people were like, wait, they didn't even know that he didn't have papers. So the reality is, you got people here who were doing well by the country, doing well. But the reality is, I go to this. We're talking about building a wall.
Well, we virtually got one now. I don't know.
We're talking about spending money on a wall.
There's 60 countries on the
Fences
planet
make
that have
good
walls.
neighbors.
But our borders, we have wildlife that we worry about. There's other things to consider besides just. See, my problem is we act as if we're
spend a
not
lot
part
of
of
time
God's
down
green
there.
earth. We act as if as the cancer that is humanity on the face of this planet has nothing to do with the earth itself. And the Bible speaks to us being good stewards. The problem is that we don't even understand what that means when you start taking care of the earth itself, being a good student of what's been given to you. This entire planet was given to mankind, and it tells you to take care of it. We forgot what that even means. It didn't say build up a wall. It said break the wall down and invite your
pictures of my
stranger
roses
into
right
your
out the
house
wall.
and feed them. We cannot win a war with a bullet. You win a war with butter. And you consider what we're doing right now, the fact that right now people in this country are hurting. People around the world are hurting. And what we're doing is isolating ourselves and thinking that we're okay in our bubble.
So
And there's more pain outside than there is. Eventually, that pain on the outside is going to get inside with you. And that's where we are right now. You win wars with butter.
So if someone breaks into your house with a
Why do you
with a
keep
gun.
saying break in? I'm just
what
told
it
you.
is.
Well, if you let some,
Because if I'm gonna ship out people who are breaking the law,
if you let
you're gonna have a whole
Richard,
group of folks out there on the island.
if you let somebody in your house and they decide they're gonna do you harm, you're gonna give them some bread and butter.
Get him a stick of butter.
Well, first of all,
Now, hang on. But if you're on the UT campus and they attack you with a knife, you get them with your dildo.
No,
You fight back with your dildo.
oh no.
That's what they said.
What
That's what they said.
what I don't understand is some people there are actually people on this planet who want to kill people.
And
There
that,
are
wait,
such people.
Wait, I'm more
I
afraid
know
of getting
some.
in an elevator with a white
I
man
know
in
some.
America than I am
I
ever worried
know
about
some.
somebody from ISIS.
I know some.
I'm more worried about the police driving up behind me than I am ever worried about ISIS. So when you start talking about people who are afraid in this country, I'm afraid. But I'm not afraid of ISIS. I'm not afraid of terrorists.
And I think we're trying to split hairs. I don't think, for one instance, now I know Richard, but I mean, I don't know him as good as some other people, but I don't think he's talking about people that are obviously criminals that walk out of a home every day with and on the forefront of their mind, I'm going to commit a crime. That's how I live. I don't think he's talking about people like that. He just mentioned students. He just mentioned business owners. He just mentioned people that are contributing to society. So I think maybe we can agree that people that's breaking the law, that they should be deported and they should be. I think we could agree with that type of situation, but that's not what he's addressing. But I think what he's saying is that because of this, a net has been thrown out, and what's coming back in the net are productive citizens, or not citizens per se, not legally, but productive individuals that are contributing to the society that we live in.
You stay there this long, Mike, you must stay for the whole thing. The guy who ran over my buddy's son and daughter-in-law was a productive citizen. He just liked to drink a lot.
Well,
He kept getting DWIs and get kicked out the country. He just come right
my question was, how did he continue to get DWIs and be set free? Because
he got deported.
You got deported and came back.
But
the point is, you can get,
wasn't he
you can
jailed
get,
as opposed to deported?
You can get rear-ended by a native Texan, right? You know, the point here is, you remember the gun control argument? We hear it a lot. Let's outlaw guns, because if we could save one life by outlawing guns, if we could save one life by getting all the guns out of people's hands, we could save one life, it'd be worth it. Why isn't that argument made for illegal immigration? Sure, you can get rear-ended by a drunk who's an American, but if we could save one person from being killed by an illegal immigrant, why don't we get rid of illegal immigrants?
People, so I can save the life, because one of them.
Well, we're going to get rid of 200 million guns. We're going to get rid of 200 million guns, because if we could save one life, it would be worth it.
A gun is not a human being.
And
I'm not destroying the family by taking a gun away.
People decided to cross the border illegally, and then they complain that their family's going to be split up. They split their family up. They split their family up by illegally entering the country. They made a choice to illegally enter the country, and now you're complaining the law is evil because it breaks up families.
To give the guns to people who have mental health issues.
All right, y'all gotta go?
We gotta go.
Yeah, it is now.
You approved the giving guns to mental health people.
See you on the next
station. We need to deal with the
I'm going to be here a few more minutes.
We need to deal with the. And if you want to stop this, you got to deal with the corporations that make it easy for them to come over. That's putting the money in the pockets of those that run the government. That's allowing it to become easier for them to come over, so that they can work, so they can, so that they won't have to pay minimum wage, so they won't have to give certain benefits, so they won't have to do certain things. Let's talk about this capitalist society that we have.
Yeah, we could all go join it, but he's in the mini studio down the way. And that ain't gonna hold us all.
Sometimes I read this Leviticus piece. This Leviticus piece is deep. This Leviticus piece is deep with respect to the stranger. But and the reality is that when we get right down to it, most of this comes down to money.
What's going on here?
It's she just running the last.
Is she running something? You're supposed to read an announcement there?
No, you can read it yourself. Go ahead. We can't stop Richard.
What is that?
I don't know what that is, Richard, but there's somebody's competing with your message, with the education message.
I don't even go in the
That's a trailer park
education.
show. I don't know.
We support this. There's a lot of ways out there. Education is the key to a lot of things.
It is. Education is important.
You can get
no question.
LULAC scholarship things.
Everybody agrees.
LULAC National Education Service Center is what it's called. We
Yeah,
part
well,
of
and
it.
but again,
In fact, education is so important, you shouldn't trust it to a government monopoly.
Well, I agree. But then again, that's a whole other show too.
That's
I
another
guess
show.
we didn't quite done. All right, Richard, I'm glad
education, education is a whole other animal, and I have a lot of my friends who are, I've had this conversation at LULAC meetings with people who are both on the public side and the charter schools and the public side.
You got any friends waiting on charter school waiting lists? Any friends or family waiting?
I don't have anybody, because I'm in the Del Valle School District, and I'm in an area that does quite well for the kids that are in the public school system.
Most of those charters are in Austin ISD. Most of those charters are in the
It's true, but there's some out in Eastern Travis County, because they actually look to say, well, we'll just take, I'm just wondering how many charter schools there are in Western Travis County. In Western Travis County, where kids where they have access to money and good education, because the reality is, you've got schools that are actually performing well in the public education system. Where are they? they exist. So we know that we have schools that do well in the public education system, and they are competitive with the charters, and they're competitive with even private schools. We know that they're there.
Well,
so
while we're there, we're not going to be here next week, folks. We'll be here for the week after that.
Why not?
I can't remember the date because we're being preempted next Monday. And Monday after that, we'll be on. And the Monday after that will be Memorial Day. So we won't be off then. Anyway, it was all good to have you on. I appreciate y'all coming on,
Thanks
Doc.
for the invitation, Richard. Always a
Richard,
pleasure. We'll do it again
It's always
sometime.
good to have Richard Franklin on because he always has
We'll do it again
opinion on
sometime.
every subject.
Well, no, my question would just be, if you've got public schools that are doing well, then how is they are, and why is that, able to be duplicated?
Anyway, we're going off here in just a few seconds, folks. Stay on this channel and catch Mike Lee.
Let's go to Mike Lee next.
Go to
Come on
Mike
back.
Lee. Mike Lee.
There we go.